came here 8 years ago, Mrs. Reagan, according to your press secretary then, Sheila Tate, you didn't fully understand the power that the First Lady has.
No.
What is that power?
Well, that you have a bully pulpit the same as the president does. But I think coming here, nobody understands what it's like to be here until you're here. Nobody understands all the pressures, I've never worked harder in my life. And there's no way to, all people see is the glamour of it, the state dinners, the meeting people, you know, all that part of it. But they have no conception of what the other part is.
Well, what are the pressures? You talk about the pressures on the First Lady. What are they?
Well, again, it gets back to the person.
Well, you're the person.
All right.
What pressures did you feel?
Well, you have the political pressures that your husband is feeling. Therefore, you are feeling to the extent of your relationship. And then there are all kinds of pressures that people don't see and they're not aware of behind the scenes.
Like
pressures with children, physical pressures.
Oh, well, yes, of course. No, this has been a very, very difficult, personally difficult 8 years.
Yes.
You talk about pressures with children. There's been a lot of talk about you and your daughter, Patty.
Mm.
Did she resent, do you think? If that's the word. Did she feel that somehow the attention went from her to the country? Did she feel somehow deprived of your attention because of public life, your public life?
All I can do is guess. I don't know. I suppose so. That's possible. But I don't know, Mike.
Fact is, she and her daughter Patty have not spoken to each other in over a year.
Let's talk about the buzzwords that focus unwanted attention. Astrology, designer dresses, the scheming power behind the throne, Donald Reagan. I don't want to get into them specifically.
Neither do I.
I'm sure you don't. But do you ever get used to that kind of criticism?
No, I really don't think so. I think you're less surprised by it, maybe. But it hurts.
We'll return with Nancy Reagan, who'll tell us what she did and what she didn't do behind the scenes in the White House during the Reagan years.
You want to drive to the sun with the most features under the sun?
Oh, wow.
Introducing the new Plymouth Sundance with 47 standard features. Prices starting at $83.95. Best value in its class. And backed by $770 protection. The Plymouth Sundance proves the 9 most important words Plymouth knows. Now, get $600 cash back on the new Plymouth Sundance.
AT&T ProWatts is a whole variety of services that offer things like calling from any one of your business lines. ProWatts gives you a 10 to 38% savings on your long-distance bill. That's the biggest advantage that it gives a customer. And then it gives them distance-sensitive pricing, and it gives them detailed billing. It gives them anything that a business would need to properly run their communications organization. Virtually any business can save money with AT&T ProWatts. If price was the only reason people used other carriers, now that's no longer an issue.
60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Call it explosive.
I should have broken Martin's leg before sending him back into battle.
Call it bold.
It's okay. It's okay.
Call it controversial.
The job got done. The Army doesn't care whether it's pretty or not.
Call it smoldering.
I'd like to see you again if I could.
You could?
Call it tour of duty. Getting hotter. Tuesday.
This is CBS.
Can 10 people help you get in shape? We hope so. Because if you ate too much during the holidays, you're not alone. And our report on Channel 10 News won't just help you look better. You'll feel better. Watch Take It Off with 10, Sherry Banks and Terry Ruggles' special report Monday on Channel 10 News. And put 10 people to work for you.
So, are you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Dad was afraid I'd find a starving artist up here.
Oh, Dad was worried.
Okay, I admit, I was a bit worried when my little sister took off on her own.
I'm not so little anymore.
Here, let me get that.
No way, mine.
American Express, huh? I'm gonna stop worrying about you.
Making you feel like a million. To become a member, look for this display and take one.
A fairy tale comes to life for Rudy, tomorrow at 5 on Channel 10.
This portion of 60 Minutes is sponsored by Federal Express, with worldwide service to over 100 countries.
To be successful in delivering packages to Europe, Canada, and Japan, it takes a lot more than fast trucks. It takes a knowledgeable worldwide staff, a computerized tracking system, and of course, a fleet of planes that fly there. Insist on all four. Worldwide service from Federal Express.
Introducing Total Raisin Bran. Other Raisin Brans have only 1/4 as much vitamin nutrition. And eating a Raisin Bran with only 1/4 the vitamin nutrition you could get is like having Mount Rushmore.
Hey.
With only one president. New Total Raisin Bran is the only Raisin Bran with 100% of 11 vitamins and minerals. Total nutrition has finally come to Raisin Bran.
We are not always kind to our first ladies. Indeed, Sheila Tate, who used to be press secretary to Nancy Reagan, says being first lady in many ways is a dreadful job. You can't please everyone, so there's a lot of hurtful criticism. We expect her to be beautiful, but not in an expensive way. We expect her to be influential, but not at cross purposes with her husband.
What was your role in the Reagan presidency? Now, everyone here says that you had a good deal more to do with the Reagan presidency than you've ever let on in public. Will you be candid with an old friend and tell me what you did and what you didn't do here in the White House?
I did not ever get involved with political decisions.
Ever?
Ever. I did have a feeling, maybe this is female versus male, but my antenna always go up when I feel that somebody is trying to end run Ronnie and has their own agenda. And that's when I step in.
And do what?
First of all, I tell Ronnie, who usually doesn't believe me, because he just doesn't think that way.
And so what do you do about it? I mean, can you give me an example of it?
Well, you named one man.
Don Regan?
Yes.
What?
Well, I thought he made as far as I never knew him when he was in Treasury, but from what I understand, he was very good. So that I never knew him until he came over here, and we never really got along all right until the hospital, and
when the president went to the hospital.
Yes. And then he wanted Ronnie to go out and do things sooner than the doctors had advised him to.
And you said no.
And I said no. And we had difficulty from then on.
Really? And did the president finally say to you, in the middle of that Don Regan episode, Nancy, get off my back about Don Regan? Promise? Didn't do that. Your son Ron says you can be either a very powerful ally or an enemy you don't want to have. How tough an adversary can you be?
Oh, if it comes to my family, yes, I can be tough.
Take a look.
Thank you, Nancy Reagan. Nancy Reagan's beautiful mother, Edie Davis, an old friend from Chicago, is here. Did you ever think that you were going to be the mother-in-law of a presidential candidate, Edie Davis?
I never did. I think it's exciting.
Well, of course it's exciting. Do you talk politics to Ron Reagan?
No. No, I don't.
You tell the children how to raise their children?
Oh, heavens, no. I want them to still speak to me.
Well, you did such a good job yourself.
You helped me.
What's that?
You helped me.
I helped you raise Nancy? Well, that's true. Nancy was a young friend of mine a good many years ago.
Oh, that's nice.
You miss her?
Yes, I do. Every day.
Let me play something else for you. I shall be very curious to see what you think of this one.
Then we come
to the conclusion that there is one of you who has covered the summit best, then you will give this book to him or to her.
Prize. Now, I want to say something. I want to say something. Okay? All right. I want to thank you for allowing my request that the 5 icons that I wanted to see get brought out.
All right. You were not happy with Mrs. Gorbachev at that moment, nor she with you.
That's right.
Once and for all. What about Raisa Gorbachev? What do you think of her? How do you analyze her?
First of all, I think there was much too much attention paid on us from the beginning, from Geneva. What we were wearing, what we were saying, what we were doing, instead of on the 2 men who were doing very important things.
Okay,
that
but
wasn't
it's
important.
perfectly apparent. I mean, she is the first Soviet First Lady who has ever gotten any kind of attention at all, so there's bound to have been. And she's an attractive person and a determined person. Indeed, there's somebody here who says that Nancy Reagan, you're going to get mad at me, Nancy Reagan and Raisa Gorbachev are alike in certain ways. They are perfectionists. They are determined. They are going to protect their husbands. They're intelligent. They are
Oh, I don't
determined.
see anything wrong with that, Mike. I'm not going to get mad at you.
You still haven't analyzed Raisa Gorbachev. And told me what you think of her.
I think she's all those things you said. But I think you come from two different philosophies, 2 different worlds, and to suddenly meet after all these years, which is one of the wonderful things that Ronnie did, open this up, to suddenly meet and be thrown together and have all this press attention on you. I'm sure that she was, I suspect that she was as nervous as I was.
Nervous?
Nervous at all the attention that was being paid. And she was new in the job. And
I heard it said that you felt that she was a Marxist who gave lectures, and you got annoyed with her a couple of times about the lectures that she gave you and people in the entourage.
Well, I'm sure if you talk to anybody who who had any dealings, she's a very dedicated Marxist, and wants to get her points across. And I think probably her, perhaps what she was doing, we would interpret as being impolite. She might not. But this is a difference in cultures.
What should Americans think about a first lady who consults an astrologer?
Well, first of all, that too was blown way out of proportion. For reasons known only to the man who did it.
Who did it?
Don Regan in his book.
You really don't like him.
Well, I don't think he's cuckoo about me. There were never any political decisions made
on the
basis of astrology. None whatsoever. And for a long time, Ronnie never even knew that I was consulting an astrologer.
This may seem a strange question, but how have you grown in 8 years in the White House?
Oh, I think in many ways, and I think it would be impossible to be here for 8 years in this job and not grow. You're exposed to so many different experiences and so many different people, and you're right in the midst of what's happening in the world, and pretty soon you begin to realize that, good Lord, you're going to be part of history.
History will also record that Ronald Reagan was the oldest American ever to hold the office of president.
You said to me earlier this morning that you work out in a gym here in the White House?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Well, there's some Nautilus equipment in there with the weights and all. Normally, I come up in the afternoon, I peel down and go in the gym, and...
What do you do? Do you have a treadmill?
A treadmill, and then various Nautilus weight equipment.
You know how this started, the exercise room. After the shooting, the doctor said that Ronnie had to do some exercises to bring back his chest. And he did, but to the point that he outgrew all of his suits were too tight for him, and I kept saying, stop, don't increase anymore. This is getting too expensive.
You mean you put on muscle?
Yes.
Up here at the age of 78?
I'll be 78 in February.
Beyond what we've read and heard and seen, what have been some of the best times here? The best times?
When he came home from the hospital.
Yeah.
When she came home from the hospital.
Mr. President, last November, you told a crowd in San Diego, I believe, a crowd of supporters, that you hoped your parents, Nellie and Jack, are looking down on you, nodding their heads and saying their kid did them proud. In these waning days of your presidency, do you ever say to yourselves, in effect, you know something? We did a pretty good job. Much better than some of our skeptical friends predicted.
Yes, I think so.
Fact is, both of the Reagans faced more than a little skepticism when they arrived in Washington 8 years ago. But agree or disagree with the Reagan Revolution, the fact is, they leave the White House the most popular first couple in a long, long time.
Someday, all Air Express companies will have landing rights in Japan, just like Federal Express. But until then, you'll just have to pretend.
Over time, they gained a wisdom about the foods they ate. The wisdom handed down in a breakfast enjoyed throughout Europe, known in America as Kellogg's Mueslix. A natural balance of wheat bran fiber, oats, rice, corn, barley, dates, almonds, and figs. Kellogg's Mueslix, bran or 5 grain, what breakfast was meant to be.
is Cadillac style.
Right now, leasing is smarter than ever because your Cadillac dealer is offering remarkably low monthly payments when you lease a sporty new Eldorado, as well as other selected Cadillacs. Just ask about Smart Lease. Cadillac style.
Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac style. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac style.
Someday, all Air Express companies will have landing rights in Japan, just like Federal Express. But until then, you'll just have to pretend.
In the mail that comes to 60 Minutes every week, there are always a lot of letters addressed to Andy Rooney. But that's not the only way people get in touch with Andy.
A couple of years ago, I got a phone call. I was sitting here just like this. The phone rang, and a woman's voice said, "Mr. Rooney?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Would you talk to Cary Grant?" Would I talk to Cary Grant? Would I talk to the president if he called? You know why Cary Grant called me? He wanted to suggest I do something about packages that are hard to open. I have some examples here of the sort of thing I think he meant. Here's a little package of the kind of crackers they give you with soup at a lunch counter. It's tidy, it's attractive, it keeps the crackers fresh, but you can't get at them. There's supposed to be a little tab here, but you can never find it. The same thing with the package of nuts they give you on an airline to make you forget that you're jammed in and how long it took you to get your ticket at the counter. There's only one way to get at these. It's like this with your teeth. I know that isn't what the inventor had in mind. They also give you these little containers of butter. They have a tab here somewhere you're supposed to be able to pull open, but half the time you can't find the tab, and if you do find it, you can't pull it. Here's a cookie that's sold in the cafeteria here at CBS. It's a good cookie, but there's no way to get started, to get into it. Cardboard boxes of food. A lot of things come in boxes like this. You know, it says push in and pull up. It sounds good, but you can't push it in, and if you do get it pushed in, you can't pull it up. This is a box of minute rice. Fine, but it takes you 3 minutes to open the box. We get 5 packages a day in the office, something like this, in cardboard. It says, pull here to open. Well, I mean, pull where to open? Cary Grant spoke specifically about the new tape that you can't tear with nylon threads in it. Well, this is a good example. This has that. But look at what it says. You can't tear it, but it says, do not cut tape with a knife. Well, how do you get into it then? I can never get into these tubes either. I mean, there's no place to start with these things. And then if you do get in, if the thing comes out of it, you're supposed to hang it on the wall, you know? It never comes uncurled. I bought a roll of stamps at the post office. It's a beautiful little package, but I need a can opener to get into these things. I hate a package that's smarter than I am and harder to open than a bank vault. Sorry I was late with that, Cary.
Now the mail. During our story about Honduras and the failure of more than $1 billion in American foreign aid to better the lot of the Honduran people, we interviewed Assistant Secretary of State Elliott Abrams, who accused us of being racist, accused us of promoting the idea that little brown people, his phrase not ours, didn't understand how important it was to have free elections. That prompted a viewer to write, "I presume I am one of the little brown people to whom Mr. Abrams alluded. Please let it be known that I do not consider it racist to point out that if people, not just little brown ones, can't feed their families, free elections have little meaning." But about the story we did on Cuba 30 years after Castro took power, a viewer wrote, "Your story highlighted Castro's only 2 achievements in 30 years, free medical treatment and free education, neither of which guarantees human rights. They are little more than what everyday people provide to their pets, veterinary care and an obedience school." About our story of a Russian doctor who claims such good results with his type of eye surgery, an ophthalmologist wrote, "It's nice to know that he now admits to 1 complication out of 30,000 cases. He used to admit to none. His surgery is good, but it's not without its problems." Finally, about our story on women in the Army, a viewer wrote, "Once again, you have twisted the facts. made it seem better than it is. I'll bet the Soviets can't wait to take on our new equal employment army. I'm Diane Sawyer. We'll be back 2 weeks from tonight with another edition of 60 Minutes.
The only way to travel is Cadillac style.
Right now, leasing is smarter than ever because you can lease a new Cadillac Eldorado, Seville, STS, or Throne for much less than you expect. Just ask your Cadillac dealer about Smart Lease. Cadillac style.
Cadillac style.
Switching to Go Tower. Someday, every international air express company will have it all. 24-hour customer service, advanced tracking systems, and their own fleet of planes flying to Europe, Canada, and Japan. Touchdown. Just like Federal Express.
All right.
But until then, the others will just have to pretend.
Nice lightning.
Worldwide service from Federal Express.
They're country music's leading ladies, the Judds, with special guest star Gary Morris. The Judds across the heartland, Monday.
The only thing keeping him from the girl he loved was his best friend.
You love Alex.
He did it for me.
Desperate for Love, Tuesday.
You're invited to a star-spangled evening with Frank Sinatra, Nell Carter, Randy Travis, Julio Iglesias, and more. Live, it's the Presidential Inaugural Gala, Thursday.
An old political hand from California, Mr. President. Your old pal, Lynn Nofziger, once said, quote, I sometimes think that if there weren't a Nancy Reagan, there wouldn't be a President Ronald Reagan or maybe even a Governor Ronald Reagan. Is that true?
That's possible, yes.
Well, maybe he meant that I supported him.
You don't want to say.
And maybe Lynn was being very cynical about me being a continuing bachelor in Hollywood.
Well, conceivably that, but I never. No, it's the power behind the throne that you just don't like to acknowledge. And what's wrong with acknowledging the fact that you have a certain amount of influence with this man?
Of course I do, just as he does with me. Of course, we're coming up 37 years married.
For a printed transcript of this or any edition of 60 Minutes, send $3 to Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007.
Imagine being lost in a fantasy world, only to discover it's real. Beauty and the Beast. Then, will the real Mrs. Ewing enter and sign in, please?
I'm Mrs. J.R. Ewing.
Did you marry this girl?
I think I'm really gonna like it here.
And you're cordially invited to a wedding, but not just any wedding, a Falcon Crest wedding. Till death do they part, Friday after Beauty and the Beast and Dallas. On The Equalizer, when the Godfather's son is kidnapped, McCall steps in to mediate.
This is a joke, right? You see anybody laughing?
The Equalizer. Then, his business about to go up in flames.
I'm liable for everything.
Desperate measures in desperate times. Wise Guy, guest starring Jerry Lewis, Wednesday.
Interstate 90, a non-stop coast-to-coast expressway.
Non-stop, that is, if you happen to hit the light right in Wallace, Idaho.
Join Charles Kuralt in the town that fought life in the fast lane, where they're proud to say the truck stops here. The story tomorrow on the CBS Evening News. This is CBS.